The president did not mention filling her vacant seat, although before the president learned of Justice Ginsburg's passing, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell took to Twitter vowing to vote by the full Senate on the president's appointee. Earlier tonight, I asked 11 Alive political analyst Dr. Andra Gillespie what Leader McConnell might do.
Although he blocked the nomination of Merrick Garland in 2016, when Justice Antonin Scalia passed away, he's likely to try to make this happen. I think the big question is going to be whether or not the Republican Senate conference is actually going to go along with that. There could be some Republican senators, particularly ones who are running in close electoral contests, who may feel skittish